So the composition of the modern atmosphere, the chemical composition of pure, dry air at lower altitude lower than about 80 kilometers or 50 miles, is simply uniform, and the concentration of the major components, such as that's called permanent gases, are essentially unvarying over time. However, certain minor gases and non-gaseous particles we call variable gas, and particles that actually change over time, place to place, and time to time. So why we call two types of gases? Permanent gases are permanent because the composition and the content into the atmosphere, it doesn't change over time. The variable gas, on the other hand, we call it variable because the concentration and the composition changes over time and place to place. So permanent gas, one of the permanent gas is called nitrogen, and two and oxygen. So the two of the most abundant gas into the atmosphere are nitrogen and oxygen. So nitrogen makes up more than 78% of the total, and oxygen makes up nearly 21%. So nitrogen is added to the air by decay and burning of organic materials, volcanic eruptions, and the chemical breakdowns of certain rocks, and it is removed by certain biological process and by being washed out of the atmosphere in rain or snow. So overall, the addition and removal of the nitrogen gas are balanced. So it doesn't change over time, so it is constant. That's why it's called permanent gas. So on the other hand, and oxygen is produced by vegetation and is removed by a variety of organic and inorganic processes. So its total quantity also apparently remains stable, and oxygen actually produced by photosynthesis, and it is being so far stable into the atmosphere. Remaining 1% of the atmosphere volume consists mostly inert gases, including the permanent gas we are talking about. So these three principal atmospheric gases, one is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. Those three has a minimum effect on the weather and climate, and therefore we do not need further consideration about the weather situation on these kinds of permanent gas. The traces gases, that's a very tiny amount of permanent gas we call neon, helium, krypton, and hydrogen, that also little effect on weather and climate. So on the other hand, we have a variable gas. Several other gases occur in this space, but highly variable quantities into the atmosphere, but their influence on weather and climate is significant. First of all, in terms of the volume, we call water vapor. So water vapor is the form of gas is known as water vapor. So water vapor is invisible. The visible form of water into the atmosphere, such as we see cloud precipitation, consists of water in its liquid or solid form. Solid form is ice. Water vapor is most abundant in the air overlaying warm, moist surface area such as tropical ocean, where water vapor may amount to as much as we call 4% of the total volume of the atmosphere. Over the desert, the water vapor content is very minimum. We can say less than 1%. So water vapor is variable because water vapor content and composition into the atmosphere varies. Another gas, the most significant and most discussion that we have is carbon dioxide. So it is important atmospheric component, and like water vapor, carbon dioxide also has a significant influence on climate, primarily because of carbon dioxide has the ability to absorb thermal infrared radiation and help warm the lower troposphere, lower atmosphere. So carbon dioxide is distributed fairly uniformly in the lower layer of the atmosphere, although its concentration has been increasing steadily for last century, and so because of the increasing burning of the fossil fuel. The proportion of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been increasingly at a rate of more than 2 parts per million. So today in our atmosphere, if we are looking at the current situation, it would be 421 parts per million. Parts per million means that 421 parts out of 1 million particle of the atmosphere. So carbon dioxide is significant and very much important because it has a lot of issue if about the global warming, climate change, and we talk about that a lot. Another variable gas, we call it ozone. So it is minor but vital gas into the atmosphere, which is a molecule made up of 3 oxygen atoms instead of more common 2 oxygen atom. So ozone is concentrated in a layer of atmosphere called ozone layer, and this layer is actually situated into the second layer from the surface we call a stratosphere, which is lies between 15 to 48 kilometers above the surface. Ozone is an excellent absorber of ultraviolet solar radiation, and it filters out enough of this radiation to protect life from potentially deadly effect of burning our skin, cancer, everything that protects. So those are important. Other variable gas, we can call it methane, CH4, and it introduced into the atmosphere both naturally and through human activities, absorbs certain wavelength of radiation, and it's also, we can say, the play a role in the regulating the temperature of the atmosphere. The tiny amount of variable gas, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and various hydrocarbons. So another uh, variable gas we call CFC, chlorofluorocarbon, we do not produce right now because we stopped it. So it's an aerosol that we used to use into the refrigerator. So this is the overview of composition of the atmosphere near the Earth's surface.